Hi, this is the Bit-Mage. Today we're going to do something a little different than what I usually do. I am, this is going to be sort of a story. I'm trying my hands at narrating, and so this one specifically is going to be about the editor wars. You might have heard about Emacs and VI being the two sides of the war. But then this is going to be a memoir, and I do not take sides as such, but then I do narrate how my evolution goes uh, from not knowing what these two are to using them in my daily workflows right now. So how exactly I discover them discover them and like incorporated them in my workflows, how my opinions grew over time, uh, and to what I actually do right now. There's a bug out here. Yeah. Okay, so let's get on to it. You might see that it's very zoomed out right now because I don't want to have any spoilers. But let's get into presentation mode. Okay, so yeah, I mean it's going to be in a bite of facts. Uh, so I start out with the basics and then I say what my journey was. I first discovered Vim and then I shifted to Emacs like pretty soon. Uh, There were, okay, so Vim and Emacs haven't just been tools for me, they have been a way of life. Uh, so I am pretty careful of how I, how I take care of my tooling and how I, I understand them and learn them and how I incorporate them and how I do things. So Vim and Emacs, they haven't just been a basic tool for me, but then really, they have been something that have changed the way I see computer science, how I interact with text, and how just interact with computers in general, everywhere I go. So I don't mean to highlight any particular tooling out there in this one. So I'm not gonna say use Vim or Emacs. I'm just gonna say how I approach things and how I went ahead. And well, finally, like what I finally am in the end, I do say that in Act triple one or like 111. Uh, that's the last bit of the bite. And yeah, so let's get into it. So the nuts and bolts of the whole thing. Uh, well, I started programming when I was okay. I mean, I did some JavaScript when I was 16 or 17 from Khan Academy, like just basic stuff. A few animations here and there. I used to do HTML before that. I mean, not used to. It's just a curricular thing. So just in my curriculum in the school days. But then that's not programming. Come on, HTML is not programming. So that was that basic HTML, CSS, and then during when I was like 16, yeah, I tried like 15 or 16. I tried a little bit of JavaScript from Khan Academy. That was not too much. I mean, there's just like probably 2 or 3 hours of just getting my hands dirty a little with animation and stuff. Uh, yeah. So as such, I did not truly understand what programming was all about. I mean, what it was for, what it was, uh, yeah, what it could be used for. I did not understand its potential. It was just that fancy thing that, uh, yeah, all those fancy software engineer jobs. Okay. At least then they were fancy. Right now, I'm not sure what you think when you actually get one. But then, perceptually, like a kid might think they're fancy. Computers are pretty good in that sense. They're like very attractive. Uh, yeah. So I still like computers, but yeah, the same. So I used to use the mouse a lot. I really started programming when I was around 18 in my junior year. Again, like because of curriculum. I did not do a lot, I did not do a whole lot before my university. Like, okay, from my in my plus two, like 16 to 18, I was just into physics, chemistry, math, preparing for my JE advance. So there's not much programming in there. Yeah, I mean, so I'm not going to comment on the syllabus right now as to like what should be and what shouldn't be there in terms of what you're going to learn. But yeah, there's that. So not a lot of programming in those 2 years. Started really programming when I was Yeah, 18. So I was really always proficient with the computer, proficient with computer in the generic sense. As in I knew my way around. I could figure out things. I could, yeah, figuring out things. That is a skill I had. But then I used to use the mouse a lot. I remember learning to touch type just before I was joining my college, my university. And yeah, that was like I did like 10 minutes every day for around 20, 30 days, and I was like pretty efficient at touch typing then. So I got around 50, 60 WPM. Like yeah, with a casual 10 minutes a day thing. And that was like decent enough for me that in the moment. So yeah. So when at 18, I actually started getting into programming. I started learning about all these generic terminology out there that programmers are into. So I posted a stupid question in my university forums once about what IDE should I use. So I thought I was like it was a forum where you could like post questions and like before getting into college and stuff. So me thinking that this might be a sort of a good question, uh, like what do you guys use that sort of stuff. So I was like, yeah, ID is an integrated development environment. I put that in the brackets, by the way. This was a group of like second, third, like juniors, sophomores, seniors, and everyone out there. And I just posted a question like, what IDE, brackets, integrated development environment, should I use? So yeah, I was like a pretty cocky kid. Uh, yeah, not so much anymore, but I was that kind of guy. I was like just probably trying to, yeah, I don't know, sound smart or something. And yeah, I had a lot of questions. I mean, there was Sublime, there was Atom, there was just a couple of guys, yeah, just talking about VI or Emacs as well in the comments. And I was like, yeah, so I did not quite understand what those were. Okay, no one talked about Emacs. I think, yeah, no one talked about Emacs, but there was Vim out there. So Vim was out there. They were like, yeah, maybe later down the lane, maybe try Vim. But like right now, you can. So I think in those days, VS Code did not exist, uh, or it was not as popular as it is today. So yeah, I think Sublime was the first thing that I started with. So that is what I started with. I started with Sublime and C with GCC being used in the terminal. So pretty basic capabilities. I was just there was no completion or anything. I was just editing text and I used to like go back and forth from the compiler errors and everything. So that's how I started. That's the nuts and bolts of the whole thing. Let's get on to the next bit. So yeah, now let's like 6 months into it, I was like, okay, so basics of programming, I could write say basic sorting algorithms in C, and your basics of data structures, memory management, all that sort of stuff, understanding what stack, heap, everything that sort of is. Uh, I could do that. I tried my hand at a few editors this time because this was my efficiency phase. So I used to watch some programming streams and stuff, and I saw a lot of people being very efficient with how their like workflows are structured and everything. So yeah, uh, like geeking out on your tools and yeah, just maxing out on your workflows, like looks maxing your workflows. That was a thing back then. For me, I was like, yeah, that should be so. Atom, Visual Studio, and then finally I got to VS Code. Visual Studio is, by the way, a 20 gig install, so that's like a very heavy duty editor. I don't know if anyone uses that right now. Probably the Microsoft guys, .NET or something like that. But yeah, so I started out first with Atom. It was Electron based, so it was pretty slow. Now I am wise enough to know that anything Electron based is going to be slow. But then I wasn't. And yeah, so the same goes for VS Code. So yeah, those were the things that I first tried then after Sublime. And I was still pretty unsatisfied. I mean, I still had to use the mouse a lot. And up until now, I hadn't started with Vim. I hadn't understood Vim key binding, so it was like a lot of clicking around. So that is not a lot of not a lot of uh, that is not what a lot of seemingly expert programmers did in how I watched their workflows. So again, there was a gap in what I thought was efficient and what I was doing. So let's move on to the next byte. I then started understanding the CLI better. So I was like intrigued by not using the mouse. And yeah, I started with WSL first. So Bash, I think Bash on Ubuntu, Bash on Windows, something like that. That's how they marketed it initially. It wasn't WSL and like that initially. So you had to go into your Microsoft Store and get Bash and Ubuntu or something like that. That was like a just CLI access to all your file system on Windows. And I mean, I was just getting started with Linux and like truly getting truly yeah observing my way around it. I think that was like around the middle of my sophomore year, middle of my second semester, so the 3 quarters into my first year, my freshman year. So yeah, I was just getting into Linux and yeah, really getting started with understanding how things work. So by my own incentives, not because of curricula, or like whatever my curriculum suggested. So that was a very that was the first revelatory phase, I would say, because yeah, I, using the CLI, of course, I did not know a whole bunch of tools, but just traversing around and see some basic file manipulation. I did not use a lot of grepset or awk then, or like all of the Unix tools that I use right now, or the new utils that I use right now. But then it was still a pretty yeah, pretty transforming experience. Like I actually felt like I am a computer scientist then for the first time when I started using the CLI. So again, okay, so this is like relatively a big leap going from a GUI to a CLI and like touching the mouse. But then again, to like edit files and everything, I shifted to VS Code for a while. So that was like pretty inefficient. So this is the moment when I started learning about how hackers code. So the initial hacker subculture from I think the MIT labs, 1970s or something like that, that sort of stuff. I started reading a lot of stuff like that. And I heard a lot about Vim. I mean, I also read a lot about Hacker News. And of course, editor was, if you're a computer scientist, you have to know what the editor was are. So you're bound to like encounter it sometime. And I discovered Vim. So yeah, by the end of my, uh, I think my third semester, so that's like 1.25 years into the 4 year journey, or the first half of my, or the first quarter of my sophomore year. I started heavily using Vim. Before that, I was like pretty proficient with VS Code. But then, yeah, it looked cool and everything. You had all the extensions, all the themes and everything, but it's still like, yeah, you just a fancy new kid on the like a new kid on the block, just using fancy tools and like not really knowing what you were doing. So yeah, that's when I like was enticed by the power of the CLI and like started getting deep into like the tooling and everything. So understanding Vim. So yeah, so all the modal editing stuff, modes, moving around, not getting your fingers off the home row, phrasal like strokes and chords with Vim. So the Vim grammar, I mean words, paragraphs, moving around, yanking, deleting, cutting, like that sort of stuff. Uh, Yeah, that's when really started getting into that. I invested some initial effort into Vim, and that paid off. That paid off big time. I started liking Vim. I started using it everywhere, and yeah, a lot of my. That is also a time when I was like uh, more into remote workflows because I was using GPUs on like remote servers. So I used to have yeah Vim. I used to use Vim on the server by switching into it. A lot of people used VS Code, but then yeah, I used to just switch into it and used Vim. And so you run a lot of long jobs, like long training jobs on yeah, when you're like a deep learning researcher or something. So yeah, I mean, we used to use Screen then for a while. I used Screen for a while, but then again, that was like not optimal, and I'm the kind of guy that just like figures it out again and again. And I mean, if something is like suboptimal, I will try to optimize it until I am satisfied. So that's when I found Tmux. Uh, yeah, Tmux plus Vim was my principal workflow for quite the while, and that was a pretty satisfactory phase. So up until now, do note that I haven't been customizing anything. So no sign of Vim script. I really wanted to see. Okay, so as and when you like level up in your skill, so you have lower skill issues, you understand what sort of more advanced skill issues there are. So you cover the basics and then you understand what sort of new stuff out there is. So that's when I learned about Vim plugins and stuff. I mean, of course, I was using plugins before, but then yeah, like writing your own plugin or like customizing the editor, a little writing functions and stuff. I remember I had this. I think there's You Complete Me, right? That's one of the extensions for like a completion engine and stuff for Vim. And I wanted my documentation was popping up and everything, but then whenever you hovered the documentation text boxes that came in, I wanted to scroll them. So that's when I wrote my first Vim script function for a basic scrolling functionality of that toolbox. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. It's like understanding how your car really works rather than just buying one. So that was like a pretty good experience. And then yeah, that's when I started really getting deep into the editor was lore, and that's when yeah, that's when I also read about Lisp. So I was introduced to Lisp by Paul Graham. I think the next slide is about Emacs. Yeah. So it's more about I went into Lisp because like Vim script looked like a very ugly language to edit your editor, and I was like, what would actually be a good yeah. So I was like, I also like saw a lot of talks about Vim then, conferences and everything. I think there's Vim Conf. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people did talk about Emacs then. It's funny. A lot of people in Emacs use evil Emacs, and a lot of people in Vim, uh, yeah, they do evangelize Emacs, uh, of course with evil in it, because like yeah, that's the best of both worlds. So we'll get into that. But then yeah, so my move from Vim to Emacs was really motivated by my distaste towards Vim script or Viml, and yeah, that's when I read about Lisp from one of the Paul Graham essays, and like yeah, Emacs is like the native runtime for any Lisp out there. So by native I mean like the most suited runtime for any Lisp out there. So yeah, that's when I got into Emacs. I spent this was probably yeah, this was like peak COVID 2020 summer. I spent around 4 days porting all my workflows, like a full day job sort of a thing, like 8 hours a day, 4 days, into porting all of my workflows from Vim to Emacs. And then I spent around yeah, like 30 more days just getting used to it. That was my summer vacation. So I used Emacs first in my summer vacation. That was great. So yeah, later on I started understanding the functionality one by one, org mode, maggot, and there's a whole bunch of other things. So this is when I started feeling comfortable with Emacs, and I first explored SICP. So SICP is a structure and interpretation of computer programs. It's like a book from the 1970s by I'm not sure about the author's names right now, but then yeah, they're like pretty yeah, they're like pretty renowned names in the hacker subculture. The original hacker subculture from the 19 from the MIT lab and stuff. It's like an MIT press book. It's available online for free. So I'll push that link out there in the description. So yeah, that was my first taste of Lisp, and like yeah, so I actually dreamt about Lisp while I was doing that book. That was like really yeah transforming that book. So that's when I did that for a long time. I did all the exercises and everything. I think I did it for like a good year and a half is like with my course and like everything. So in my junior and my the end of my yeah the June my junior year and the second half of my sophomore year. So it was a pretty heavy book, I'd say, with the exercises and everything. It's pretty dense. And my coursework was also pretty dense. So balancing those two was a little difficult. Yeah, I was like pretty stressed out and like pretty occupied in my junior year. So still, I completed the book in like probably a year and a half, probably a year, with a lot of breaks in between. So that was like the most interesting book on computer science that I've ever read till date. Uh, Going from like high school math to like a very deep understanding of like the like say Maxwell's equation of software, apply and eval. So yeah, that really changed the way I think about computers. So that is the first time I'd say I experienced like intellectual freedom symbolically. And Yeah, that was the first taste of pseudo competences, like what people actually are trying to say when they trying to express the power of Lisp, and like it wasn't just limited to like reading articles anymore, but then I truly had experienced what Lisp could do. So that is the first time, and Emacs is like what the whole thing was carried out in. So that is also when I started using a whole bunch of Emacs functionality for my daily workflow. So taking my course notes, org mode, blogging, and all those sort of things. So I think I was using vanilla GCC-Emacs like native compiled, uh, and of course like Evil, uh, on Windows by the way, on WSL. So I was on Windows for quite a while, and I was using an X11 forwarding uh, tool. I do not recall the name of it right now. But then that's how I used Emacs, and I used to just spend my time in Emacs. I mean, of course, okay, yeah, I was using Windows, but then I really spent all of my time in Emacs. So my OS was actually Emacs, and because it was GCC Emacs, it wasn't that slow. But the Windows really does, Windows really does ruin the Emacs experience for you a little. So yeah, shift to Linux if you can. Right now I'm using GCC Emacs on Fedora, so this is like pretty snappy, so there's no complaints out there. That is the Emacs thing. This is also when I, yeah, and mind you, like I hadn't completely explored what Vim could do. I just shifted away from Vim because of Vim script. So yeah, this is when I started building a sort of let's say a superiority complex with Vim and Emacs. So I was like really starting to take sides, and the editor was. I was an Emacs guy now. So okay, I was an Emacs guy now. So I mean, I'm still an Emacs guy, but then you should have met me in those times. Like yeah, I would really try to convince you. I mean, if you we could debate over like what's great, Vim or Emacs. Moving on, that is my self-right to speak in terms of the editor was. So I would vouch for Emacs. I mean, as a general in a war or something. I mean, I would judge you if you like really use the mouse or like. Okay, I had some respect for the Vim guys. I was like, yeah, you'll get into Emacs soon. Or be like, I used to like condescendingly say that, yeah, that's the start of your journey. You find out Emacs soon. But then like anyone else, like VS Code guys, I used to like, yeah, look down on them. So that was that was a pretty snarky phase, and like I had a lot of conversation around Vim and Emacs then. So that is something I don't know. Probably everyone goes through sometime. This probably lasted for a while, and then what happened next was I think like that lasted for like around 2 3 years, whereas like a very heavy Emacs proponent. Uh, well then what happened next? So like things happened. I mean, in my life, other than like my computer choices and stuff. And yeah, I was like away from the computer for quite a while. So yeah, uh, plus like Emacs, when I like started getting back to work and everything, Emacs couldn't handle a lot of a lot of native workflows that I wanted to do, and like I started noticing that I was just being sort of very stubborn in like what I do with what I'm trying to do. So I was heavily into data science workflows then, and then I was an AI engineer for quite a while. So uh, yeah, I mean I still work with data and everything, but then I was like specifically an AI engineer, and yeah, Emacs isn't quite the environment out there. That is, I'll get that notification. That is quite the tool for data science out there. So, I mean, I knew Jupyter existed and stuff, but then and like I was like heavily using Python. Literate programming is a thing in Emacs. It is, it is great. It is great. But then Jupyter Lab, you don't beat Jupyter Lab when it comes to data science, just in just terms of like getting things done. So yeah, that is when I first, like ditched my ego and like started using Jupyter Lab for quite a while. And like from the time I also used the VS Code or remote servers because like I think that had a Jupyter extension then. And yeah, just working with images, graphs, and like reports, CSV, everything is just better. Uh, so yeah, that's when I started realizing that I have been sort of Yeah, and fair towards people who don't use Emacs or Vim. Of course, I used Vim, VI bindings and VS Code again. So I'll still judge you probably if you don't try to get into VI bindings, but then I'm okay if you don't use Emacs, is what it is, or if you like use something else. So that is the first regression in terms of my ego when it comes to being an Emacs evangelist. So yeah, I mean those days were like not that good. It's like it's fine. I mean, yeah, it's whatever. But then they did put some sense into me. There was some wisdom into it, and yeah, so a lot of uniformity demands from people around me that forced me to get into VS Code and Jupyter Lab, let's say. So there's that. And these are like a little like slightly boring days. I mean, I still love computers, but then I was like, yeah, this is like just what everyone does. This is the average thing that people do. So then I started. Okay, so the next bit of the bite is, yeah, I wanted to achieve efficiency again. So for quite a while, probably 6 months, I was suboptimal. And yeah, I was like, I was bored. So I started looking into Neovim because you could customize it with Lua. So the reason I left Vim was Vim script. But then if you could do Lua, anyway, I also prefer Lisp over Lua. So Lua is still like a compromise when it comes to Lisp. So yeah, that's when I started working with Neovim plus Tmux on my remote workflow. So a lot of I just used to switch into everything. So I had a lot of VMs out there, and that's where my work was logged. So Emacs trap mode sucks. So this is what it was, Neovim plus Tmux. I at least escaped VS Code, so that was good. And for my notes, so for blogging and everything, I still had Emacs, vanilla Emacs on Windows. So I had Windows, I had WSL, I had vanilla Emacs that was Windows native this time, not running on WSL, and I was just using it for note taking, writing, and that sort of stuff, not programming. I used to program in Neovim and Tmux. It was all a little too scattered, and well, yeah, I mean, I would say humbling. I was pretty humbled at this point. I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't even have a good workflow. It's like it's very, yeah, like very inefficient then. I was like, yeah, what am I doing really? But then I ditched Windows and yeah. So okay, I think it's a recap time. I think we're ending the last bit of the whole thing. So the story so far, well, I started as an ambitious teenager who wanted to just know the power of computers and how to get efficient and stuff. I then, yeah, soldier of the light side. I mean, Vim. I was into Vim for a while, and I used to vouch for Vim bindings, and like I used to, yeah, uh, fight for Vim. As to like from VS Code to Vim, I used to look down on people who used VS Code. Well, then I was a general of the dark one. I used to look down on people who used Vim or VS Code and did not use Emacs. If you did not use Emacs, you were probably like lower down in my sights. I was like, yeah, that's a pretty, huh, yeah, that's how it exactly was. And then, well, the impractical idealist, like the one who loved Emacs too much, and like, yeah, that's that phase. So this was bound to have a rebound, and yeah, so I started using everything then. I mean, I did not care about yeah, any philosophies out there or whatever. Uh, it was still a gloomy thing. I mean, I did not particularly enjoy my tools. I just got the job done, and yeah, this is not a yeah, not a healthy state to be in for quite long. I would say you should sort of take care of your tools. Uh, yeah, don't just yeah. I mean, try not to be average in terms of how you carry out your workflows because average is pretty bad. The average out there in terms of anything is pretty bad. So if you're just using whatever is recommended like right away in the first go, and it's like you're not optimizing for your own self, you're missing out on a lot of things. Once that happened, I was of course the humble recluse, and I started building up my environments again from the ground up. I ditched my old Vim and Emacs config and I started building things from the ground up, from scratch again. So this time around, I had some experience as to like what stuff did I do wrong, how like mentally in my attitude and stuff, like how should I approach these tools and stuff, uh, how I should balance getting things done and like catering to my tools. So this was a pretty like pretty necessary phase, I would say. So the humble recluse, that was a pretty necessary phase, and I am just exiting that one right now, like fairly recently, probably like 5 6 months ago is when I started exiting that, where I am actively an Emacs proponent again, but then I still respect everything now. So I've shifted on Linux Fedora as my daily driver, and I do work on a lot of remote servers. So Windows are out of the picture. I haven't logged into Windows for like quite a while now. I don't know how Windows looks now. I probably might lose my way when I like log into something for a while before I figure things out. But yeah, I am the mature pragmatist now. So I do not vouch for anything. Uh, Emacs, it's like Doom config right now, and of course GCC native compiled. That is my cyber Batcave. Tmux plus Neovim work as my remote watchdogs. And whenever, say, Docker containers or you're executing into some runtime, like remote runtime, I think, I use VI. Of course, VI might not be out there anywhere, everywhere. So, I mean, you might have to like drop into Nano sometime. But I just hate that. Okay, so that's one more level of maturity that I need to gain. I need to stop hating Nano. That's one thing. I definitely look down on people that use Nano instead of VI. So yeah, that's one more level of wisdom that I need to gain. And there's a rather than just like using the tool, I mean, I have started using them philosophically now. So the Unix philosophy is something that I'm pretty heavy on right now. I actively like upgrade my skills out there. So grab said awk, like I've actively invested time in like learning the syntax, knowing the intricacies, and heavily using them in my workflows right now. Uh, so yeah, this is the final bit of the whole bite of the memoir that I had in terms of the editor was this is how I am what I am today. And it was a very long journey. I'm 24 right now. I'm like barely 24 right now. I turned 24 on the 1st of May 2024. So not barely 24, like 24 and a sixth. So 24 and 2 months probably, yeah. 24 May, June, July. Okay, wait. May, June, July. Yeah, I'm a quarter into it. I'm like 24.25 right now. So, yeah, I started when I was like 19.5 or 19.25, I would say. No, I started when I was 19. So it's been like, yeah, around 5.25 years. It's been it's been a very long journey. Only now have I started looking at the big picture and like I do not vouch for anything. I could advocate for anything at at this moment, but then I choose not to. I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, I have my own preferences and opinions, but then I do not enforce them on anyone. I just move on, get things done, and get on with my day. So yeah, that is a very healthy way to live, and yeah, that is fairly decent. I also will not judge you if you use anything other than Vim or Emacs. That is a big achievement for me. So that's great. And yeah, that was the journey of the Bit-Mage in terms of the yeah, that there was chapters and that there was. So do let me know if you're like pretty fresh into this. What was your journey? What is your journey where you are currently? Do you still think anything is superior than the other? And do you plan on, like, I don't know, do you plan on maturing sometime and like really getting down to using Emacs and like, yeah. So there's that. Yeah. If you're really mature, you would use Emacs, by the way. So yeah, there's that. Being wise is one thing, and being like practically wise, like pragmatically wise is one thing. So pragmatic wisdom is using Emacs. That's just uh, that is it for today. So this was the Bitmage. I mean, this is something different that I tried today. I will post more videos soon, and yeah. So I do understand that you guys might be looking for more of a technical vibe into the channel. Uh, I am planning for a more long-term corpus of videos that I want to build. So yeah, you should see Emacs videos majorly. But then, of course, there's going to be a lot of other things that I put in from time to time. Do check out my blog, thebitmage.com. That's where you see like slightly refined thoughts of mine. And if you want to see like the cutting edge of my brain in the moment, go to the buffer subdomain of that website. So buffer.thebitmage.com should treat you with some funny insights, I would say. And of course, I'm like pretty easily accessible via Twitter. So Raj Patil 152K. I would be reachable via Twitter. I do check it from time to time. Uh, and yeah, thanks for tuning in. This was the Bitmage again. See you in the next one. And yeah, that's it. Do let me know where you are in the journey. What do you think of? I was trying to be honest in this one, so let's see how this is received in the Editor Wars subculture. Okay, see you in the next one.